Hey, folks, welcome back for Business and Life Stories with Mike and James. Joining us this week is Renee Ferguson, who's a lifestyle coach. And why do we bring her on the show? Because she's not like any other coach we've met. This is really cool. It's going to be a great episode, and you're going to learn a lot. We found Renee through Jared Nichols' New Futurist, which many of you know and follow, as you should. And as always, down below this video are links for how you can reach Renee and how you can download her free worksheet and how you can book a clarity call. So let's get right into it. Renee, you came up with this cool thing called habit stacking. How do you do that without forgetting to do it?
Well, we all have habits, and it's actually not something that I came up with. James Clear talks about habit stacking in his book, Atomic Habits. But we all have habits, both good and bad. And when you want to add something, so many times people want to add 5 or 6 new things, and it's just too much. When you're talking about goals, and you want your goals, when you're talking about a habit, to be something that is repeatable and achievable. For achievement goals, if you're wanting to save a certain amount or train for a marathon or get out of debt, whatever it is, those you want to stretch you. You want it to carry you to be something difficult. If it's easy, it's not really a goal. When you're talking about habits, you want it to be easy enough to achieve, or it will never become a habit. And an easy way to achieve a goal, a habit goal, is to sandwich it in between something that you're already doing. So if you have a cup of coffee every morning as soon as you get up, and you're wanting to also have some devotional time, and you want to instill that new habit, maybe you would pre-place your devotional book right there by the coffee pot, so that when you make your coffee, you have your devotional and you sit down and do a short devotional while you're having your cup of coffee. But it's about habit stacking, is adding that one thing to something you already do, making that a habit, and then adding something else. If you try to add too many pieces at once, you probably won't be successful. It's a great way to instill new habits.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. And I'm kind of laughing at myself now that you've explained this so clearly, because I did that with our boys when they were little. I would lay out the pants and the socks and the shoes by the front door so that they never tried to go out the front door without them.
Right. It's so many times, it is about making things easier to achieve. We want to set ourselves up for success, and especially with habits. So if you can pre-place something or stack something in between habits that you're already doing, then it just makes it easier to achieve. So it's a great way to move forward and be successful with your habits.
Are there any? Sorry, I was gonna ask Renee. Are there any kind of broadly kind of categorized habits, which are just general ones, which it'd be great if we all did these broad grouping of habits, be there some quiet time, some journaling, some exit, like whatever it is. But have you identified what general habits really can be really, which any person, any entrepreneur can apply, and they almost invariably create a better life?
Whether you're talking about creating new habits and habit goals or achievement goals, so many times we focus on very specific areas. We think about fitness, we think about finances, we think about our careers, but there's so much more to each of us. And so when I'm coaching clients or doing a workshop, I talk to people about different life spheres and making sure that you're looking at all of those. You don't want to set too many goals at once. I recommend 3 or 4 per quarter, 8 to 12 per year, because if you're trying to work on too many things at once, it fractures your focus and your energy, and you're not going to accomplish much. So you don't want to have goals set in each of these life domains, but you also don't want to just ignore one or put it on the back burner for several years, or you're going to be like a wagon that has a wheel that's off, and you're just eventually going to veer off course because you're neglecting part of your life. So I talk to people about physical goals, emotional goals, intellectual and spiritual goals. If you're married, then you would have marriage goals, or if you have children, parenting goals, financial goals, social goals, recreational, and career. And so many times people are not thinking about all of those different parts of themselves. I'm a military spouse, and so part of what I like to do is volunteer doing workshops for other military spouses. And because of all of the moves that we make, and you move to a new state, and a lot of times spouses have to get recertified. By the time they get that recertification, they're moving to another state. So they may have put their career on hold for many years, whether it's deployments or moves or whatever. And so, a lot of times they haven't thought about career goals. And then their soldier is preparing to transition to civilian life through retirement or a medical discharge or something. And they have all of these areas of life that they just haven't been able to think about for years, because they have been the only parent home while their soldier was deployed, or because they have made all the moves and all of these different things. And all of a sudden they have choices to make, and they think about just this little window of their life, and there's so much more. And when we don't set goals in all of those different areas, we can get off balance, and you're going to be dissatisfied when you feel off balance. Even if you're accomplishing great things in parts of your life, you're going to be dissatisfied because you're not going to have that complete satisfaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously having goals across across all our life's domains is really important. I guess, does a person need a habit specifically related to a goal which they're trying to achieve? So if they're looking at 3 to 4 goals a quarter, maybe a family goal, a financial goal, a health goal, perhaps, would you say that the habits maybe need to be connected to those goals, or are some general habits which are all encompassing across a lot of our life's domains?
As I mentioned earlier, we all have lots of habits, both good and bad. If you're wanting to instill a habit or to get rid of a bad habit, you only want to have one habit goal that you're working on at a time, because it's something that you're trying to repeat. It's something that you're trying to continue. You're going to probably be doing it every day or multiple times a day. It's going to take a lot of focus and energy. And so you don't want to have too many habit goals at a time. When you asked earlier if there was something specific or some specific types of habit goals that would be helpful, I find that it depends on the person, because we aren't all neglecting the same things. And so, for so many I find anyway that for a lot of busy moms, we end up neglecting our physical goals, whether it's sleep or exercise or eating properly. We end up doing all these other things, and we neglect physical goals. And so that's a commonality a lot of times with my clients, because I work with so many busy moms, working moms, or military spouses. And it can vary depending on the person, the age, the stage of life, whether or not you have children, whether or not you're married. It really depends on the person as far as the habits you might need to instill. But I think that spiritual disciplines and habits, having those physical habits, having even career habits, things that you do to make your day go more smoothly, whatever you're doing at the beginning of your work day or at the end of your work day to set that next day up for success. There are habits that we need to have in all of the areas of life to make them flow more smoothly. Think about it kind of like putting things on autopilot. When you have a habit, you don't have to think about it. So it's going to make things run more smoothly. And when you can put something on autopilot for your career, which is huge for entrepreneurs because we have so many demands on us, then that's going to free up brain space and energy and focus time for other things. So you're not instilling a habit just for the sake of that habit. Yes, there are going to be positive results, but it's going to free you up to do so many other things.
So for people who are running an early stage company, we all have been through the 2 a.m. voice, the 3 a.m. voice, the 4 a.m. voice, all saying different things night after night. And oh my gosh, all this stuff not getting done, et cetera, et cetera. What are some emotional habits that you help people build to deal with that? I assume there's also physical habits that go along with it, such as trying to get enough sleep and exercise. But how do you help people learn, or how do you help your clients learn to get those emotions to subside a bit?
One of the first things that I work with clients on is figuring out their life goals for at least the next 10 years. And once we know that, I take them through a finding the gaps exercise where we look at where they are today and where they want to be. And then we can set some specific goals. Based on those goals, we know their priorities. And when you're clear on your priorities, because we can't get it all done. There's no way we can possibly get it all done. And that's not going to stop you from having those creative ideas at 2 o'clock in the morning. But when you're clear on your priorities, then you know when you go to bed at night what you need to be focusing on the next day. And when things go haywire or technology messes you up or something takes longer than it should, and you can only get that one thing done, you're very clear on what that one thing needs to be because you know your highest priority for the day. One potential habit that I have found helpful and has worked for some of my clients, if you have those creative ideas, or if you think of things as you're getting in the bed at night, have a small journal and a pen right there by your bed on your bedside table, and go on and jot those things down and get them out of your mind, because that's going to clear up that space and it's going to free you up so that you can settle down and go on back to sleep. If you don't write it down and get it on paper, then you're going to continue thinking about, oh my gosh, I've got to remember to do that. I've got to remember to do that. Oh, did I think about doing that? So go on and write it down, and then you can add it to your calendar when you get up in the morning. You can figure out where it's going to go in your week. You can add it to your list of creative ideas for things that you want to do in your business, but it doesn't have to keep you awake at night.
That is such a great tip. I'm glad you taught me that.
Well, thank you. I hope it'll help.
Most of our listeners are really going to enjoy hearing that one.
I hope so.
You work with lots and lots of people, but you didn't start out doing this, right? Or did you just come out of school deciding to be a lifestyle coach?
No, I did not. When our boys were young, I actually homeschooled for 8 years. And once our oldest was ready to start kindergarten, and I taught school for a few years. I volunteered a lot as a military spouse. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, our boys are older, 2 are in college, and our youngest is a senior in high school. And I was thinking about the things that I've done and the ways that I've loved helping others. And even in mentorship type roles, I've never done a formal mentorship as far as, assuming that what worked for me was going to work for someone else. It was all about coaching them based on their current needs and where they wanted to be, whether it was in homeschooling or a young spouse within the church, or teachers, whatever, military spouses. And so life coaching just seemed a natural fit for what I already love to do and the things that I love to help people achieve.
It's I also homeschooled my children for a number of years, but it's isn't it interesting how so many of us come across coaching, whether it's as a client or we become a coach, sort of later in life. It's almost that our early kind of journey kind of adds something, isn't it? Sort of maybe provides us with the insights, and there comes a time where we feel that we're ready to support others with what we've learned and our insights to support them, right?
Oh, definitely. I completely agree with that. I think all of the experiences that I've had in the past definitely contribute to the things that I'm now able to coach others through. And for me, it's about equipping people with the strategies for them to be successful on their own. My desire is not to have an ongoing client relationship, but in about 12 weeks, to take someone from the beginning of creating a life vision through the goal setting process, figuring out what's missing in their lives, clarifying those priorities, and then teaching them how to set those weekly objectives so that they can reach their goals. And within about 12 weeks, someone should be able to then launch and use these strategies on their own, because it's not a secret sauce. It's strategies that anybody can use to be successful and to move forward and to have the life you want. I see so many people who are in survival mode. They're just trying to get through. They may not be miserable where they are. I'm not saying that you have to be miserable to be in survival mode, but they're so busy getting through each day that they're not thinking much beyond the day.
Yeah.
And if we don't live life intentionally, deciding where we're going to spend our time, how we're going to spend our focus, our energy, it's spent somewhere. Is it spent on the most important things? And there are so many wonderful opportunities out there. But one thing that I talk to my clients about, when you're saying yes to one thing, you're actually saying no to something else. And so if you're going to have to say no to those things, make sure that your yeses are the right yeses and that your no's are the right no's.
I think Michael might pick me up on this, but am I right in saying, Mike, that Warren Buffett says one of the keys to success is saying no? Or was it Charlie Munger who was one of those two? I'm sure. But the power of saying no is really powerful, isn't it? It's empowering in itself to be able to say no. And no doubt, do you find that a lot of your clients are in the position or in that survival mode because they've either never been given permission, so to speak, to say no, or they feel maybe it's inappropriate. Others always come first. So it's, yes, I'll certainly do X, Y, Z. Whereas, do you feel that saying no is a really important aspect within one's journey of maybe being able to say no so we can put our life back on track and really find out what we want to achieve in the future, right?
Most definitely. And for some clients, I've actually suggested that they practice saying no. We've talked about specific situations when I know they have a difficulty saying no in certain situations. We have rehearsed how they can say no politely. I mean, you don't have to be rude to say no. But if you say yes to something and you can't give your full energy and devotion, if you're going to have to bow out half the time because you're overcommitted, then are you really doing them a service by saying yes? We think so many times that, yes, oh, they need help with this, so I've got to say yes because nobody's got to do it. And if you can't really give yourself to it, you're not helping much. You're not helping yourself, you're not helping your family, and you're not helping that thing to which you've committed. So, it can be a difficult thing to say no, but nobody overcommits because they want to be overcommitted. So many times it happens in gradual degrees. You end up adding one thing and then you add something else and you think something's just going to be temporary and it's not. Or your kids have to do this activity and you just take on too much. We had to make a decision for our boys, even though one of them really wanted to play basketball for a while. Gil was gone a lot. And so we did fall sports and we did spring and summer sports. But I needed a break. And I knew that for the family's sanity, I needed a break. And it was the best thing for each of them to have me be healthy and me be okay and not completely frazzled. Not that I wasn't frazzled sometimes, because I definitely was. I was a victim of overcommitting for sure. And it was purely self-inflicted. But it's something that that so many people struggle with. And it's not just a personal thing. We overcommit at work as well. We say yes to a project that we really should. It should be a team effort. We take on something that's not within our strengths, and so we can't do the best job for it. It's okay to ask for help, to ask for support, and it's definitely okay to say no.
It's when I sort of came across coaching, basically my whole life kind of fell apart, and I was in this bit of a black hole. And then a neighbor introduced me to the concept of coaching through a system she was using called the Fundamental Human Needs. I believe it was put together by a Chilean economist, I think, in the 60s. But it really introduced me to being able to it introduced me to everything that we've covered about how we can create the life that we are entitled to, that we should be creating. And it always made me wonder why these kind of basic and essential life skills are not taught to us during the educational kind of processes, particularly in high school. And I mean, I just felt that I in particular had spent 20 years of my life without these skills and tools and techniques and strategies. And do you ever wonder sort of why people's lives often have to reach a point of survival or even beyond that until we feel that we can reach out, we can give ourselves time, we can give ourselves permission to work on ourselves, to say no. Why isn't it within the whole educational system or within the kind of the society? Why do so many of us have to go through this kind of this undulating journey until we find coaching and the coach who can support us?
I think a lot of times we find people through stages of life. It may not be a formal coaching relationship, but just like all the people that I worked with in the past before I officially became a life coach, we find that we seek out those people who have been through the place where we currently are so that they can give us that insight and give us the help. Now, as far as something, I'm not sure that kids in school, even at the high school level, would necessarily appreciate some of this. I think sometimes you have to go through a few things to realize what you need.
True. Yeah.
But plus the school system has a lot on their plate already.
Obviously.
But it was
and that's
something.
A different conversation.
Yes, yes. It was one of the benefits of homeschooling. When we were homeschooling for all those years, we were able to teach the boys some of the life skills that they wouldn't potentially have had within the classroom. So, we're helping our families out when we pass those things down. But I think that if you're not in a position to actually hire a coach right now, find someone who has been through what you're going through right now. They don't have to be in the same career. They don't have to have their family makeup doesn't have to look exactly like yours, but someone who has successfully navigated where you are right now that can help you walk through those stages. It doesn't mean that they're going to help you solve every problem, but they can share insights and help you navigate that. I do think it's very beneficial for entrepreneurs to have someone at a higher level that they can go to for insight and for support and to ask questions and to bounce ideas off of. And maybe you don't start out with a formal business coach initially, but to have someone like y'all mentioned, Jared Nichols at the beginning. Jared offered insights to me when I was starting my business. And we've continued to have conversations over the last 2 years, and he's been a great help. So having someone that you can talk to and do all of that. And if you're talking about personal things that you're trying to navigate in life, then it is helpful to have a life coach, or if you're trying to change things about your health, then find someone who specializes in that. I'm not a dietitian and I'm not a fitness coach. So if you need help with those things, don't come to me. But if you are overwhelmed with life, if you are frazzled and you just need to get your head above water, sometimes when you're in that survival mode and you're just trying to get through every day, even if you're a very organized, goal-oriented person, you're so busy trying to survive that you can't see the clear path ahead. And so having someone outside of your current situation that can help you navigate that can ask you the right questions, because it's not about me telling people how they need to successfully move forward. It's about asking the right questions and figuring out where they want to go, so that then we create a plan to help them get there. It's not my plan. If it's my plan, they're never going to stick to it. It has to be a plan to help them get where they want to go.
I am so glad you said that. That is something that James and I have been preaching for several decades now. Folks, a plan, a program, an idea, a template, these are starting points. You have to have it become and turn into your plan so you can do all these things Renee's talking about. So Renee, I have I have a question. If you're dealing with someone and they're not quite sure how to learn how to say no or how to ask for help, how would you advise people like me and James? We may not be working with somebody in that position, but we may notice somebody struggling. What's a good way for us to go approach them, since we're not their coach, but we can see that they're having a problem with something? What are some good approaches to take?
I would say the first thing, depending on how well you know them, maybe you know them really well, and so you're very comfortable coming up and asking some questions. But if you don't have a great relationship with someone, that confidential relationship with someone, they may not be comfortable sharing things, and they may not be willing to listen to what you have to say, no matter how well intentioned you are. So getting to know a little bit more about where they are and more about the struggles they're facing will help you help them. You've got to know a little bit more about where they are. But
Mm.
I think it's okay to ask questions about where they want to be at the end of the year. Where do they want to be spending time? Where is their focus? If they're frustrated because they're not spending enough time with their family, then what needs to change? Because that frustration is there because they're dissatisfied and they're spending, it doesn't mean that where they're spending their time is not valuable, but it's not meeting their family needs. And so something needs to change. And so if you can see they're frustrated and you can start asking questions about where they would like to be spending their time, what's causing these problems, then that will help you identify what needs to change.
That's super helpful, because I can't speak for James. I myself try to help people too soon. As you say, I haven't really let that relationship develop to the point where I can really say anything. And it's usually in a business context, like watching entrepreneurs try to work 25 hours a day or something. That's usually the context where I see people getting in trouble. So you've given me a little bit better approach to this. Now, what are some good ways? I know most of our clients are really generous and fun people, because that's why we took them on. What are some good ways for us to make sure we're not overcommitting? Like, there are people like James, for example, who never say no if someone needs help, but obviously that could keep him busy 24 hours a day if he let it. So what are some filters we can use, particularly business owners that get a lot on their plate, for deciding who they can help and who they can't?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, the context of someone coming to us or going to them saying, hey, can you help me with something?
Often we feel like we have to give an immediate answer or an immediate response.
Mm.
And if you know you have trouble saying no, then give yourself at least a 24-hour window before you'll give that response. You tell them that you'll take the information, that you'll be glad to think about it, and you'll let them know by X date and time. And that gives you time to think about it. When years ago, when I was overcommitted because I was struggling to say no, particularly for things where our boys were involved. They needed a coach, they needed a teacher for something at church, they needed a volunteer at Boy Scouts, they needed whatever. And it was our boys' program. So they were potentially going to suffer if they didn't have that volunteer, and it was difficult to say no. And so Gil and I had an agreement that I would talk to him before I added any additional commitment. Not that he was going to say, yes or no or whatever, but that gave me time. Because if I needed to talk to him about it before I said yes or no, it gave me time to think about it. And often in talking through it with him, I realized I didn't have time to add that, or I realized I was going to have to let something go to add that commitment. So it's all about giving yourself that window to really evaluate the opportunity. There are so many people that need help. There are so many people that we could take on as clients and different things. We could just wear ourselves out and work nonstop, but we can't do it. So if you're going to do your best for your clients, you know that you can't overwork. That means you've got to say no to certain areas. If you're going to give your best to those that you want to help in pro bono cases or whatever it may be where you're volunteering, if you're overworked, you can't give your best to them. So you've got yourself that window to really evaluate, to figure out if it is the right thing for you, and then to make that decision.
Absolutely. I think I think kind of, I guess, moving on from there, just giving ourselves time is such a huge thing, isn't it? Even if it's 5 minutes every day to breathe, or giving ourselves time for a walk, or giving ourselves, as you said, sort of giving ourselves permission to hang back from what appears to be an urgent decision. But if we stand back and reflect on it, 24 hours, 48 hours, 4 days a week, it doesn't actually make a great deal of difference in the big scheme of things, but it can really make a big thing for our lives, can't it? To say yes or to say no, or hang on, I need some time for me within my schedule now.
Definitely. Yeah, there are easy decisions that we can make quickly. Sometimes there are emergency decisions that we have to make quickly, but most decisions don't have to be made immediately. And rather than worrying about it, fretting about it, if you will give yourself some space and give yourself a deadline to make that decision so that it doesn't go on, because I've worked with some people that feel like they just have to constantly, they're looking for this or researching that option, and you're trying to get so much information that you never actually get started. So give yourself a deadline, but give yourself the space that you need to make that decision. And I talk with people about building white space into their calendar, because most things take longer than we expect, and that can end up making your day very frazzled and frustrated. So if you build some white space in there, don't have everything just back to back with no room to breathe. Even if it all went well and that 3-hour project only took 3 hours, you need time to breathe. So build that white space into your calendar, build that white space into your life. Give yourself time to breathe, time to get outside. For entrepreneurs, that's often where we get our most creative ideas, when we are going outside for a walk, when we're not in the middle of it, trying to get it done. We need to step back, and we need some space often, not sitting here at our computers, but getting somewhere where we can be creative, we can think about things, giving ourselves time to talk something over with a friend, not even someone in business, but just someone to bounce off ideas off of.
Wow, that is such a great thing. And I hope all of you are taking this to heart and paying attention. You can get a hold of Renee at the links down below the video. Renee, what's a final thought or a call to action or something you want to add before we close out?
Often when people are frustrated with where they are, and again, that doesn't mean that they're miserable where they are, but they're tired and they're not sure where to go. They're not sure how to make a change. Find someone to help you through it. It doesn't have to be a paid life coach, but there are people that can help you. I'd be happy to have, in 15 minutes, we can accomplish a lot. And I offer a free 15-minute strategy call where we can just talk about some things. But don't stay frustrated and don't stay overwhelmed. It doesn't have to be that way. And your life is your story. So make sure that you're living it intentionally.
Oh, that's Renee Ferguson, folks. Can't wait to have her back in another episode, and make sure you send in those comments as usual. Thanks for being here, Renee.
Thanks so much
Thank
for
you
having
so
me.
much. Thank you.
It was a
so
pleasure.
much.